My name is Julia Evans. I'm 35 and I work in finance, spreadsheets, strategies, investor calls. I've handled high-stress boardrooms and last-minute market crashes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the moment I found my 8-year-old daughter curled up under a thin blanket on the cold back porch, her cheeks flushed from the wind, her hands gripping a broken ceramic plate like it was a guilty secret. That night I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply knelt beside her, tucked her hair behind her ear and whispered, "Who did this to you, baby?" And she looked up at me with those wide brown eyes, full of something I hadn't seen before. Not just fear. Not just sadness. But shame. A kind of quiet belief that maybe she deserved it. My daughter's name is Chloe. She's not my biological child. She's the daughter of my late sister, who died in a car crash when Chloe was just 2. I stepped in, became her legal guardian, her mother, her everything. And then I married David. And with him came in-laws, Helen and George, who never quite saw Chloe as one of theirs. I had ignored the warning signs, the subtle comments, the unequal gifts, the way Helen always said Lily's our real grandchild, as if Chloe was just visiting. But that night, when I found Chloe outside like a stray, was the end of my silence. If you're a mother, if you've ever felt torn between peace and protection, between family harmony and your child's well-being, then you'll understand what I did next. Because no matter how hard the fallout, I was done letting my daughter sleep in the cold to keep someone else warm. I never planned on becoming a mother. Not in the traditional sense, at least. I was 27, laser-focused on my career, living in a small but beautiful apartment in Portland, Oregon when the call came. My sister, Hannah, and her husband had been driving home from a weekend getaway. A truck lost control in the rain and crossed the median. The impact was instant. They died at the scene. I remember sitting on my kitchen floor, phone in hand as my world shifted. Grief came in waves, but so did something else, panic. Because their daughter, Chloe, had just turned 2. And now she had no one. No one but me. I flew out the next morning, numb. I hadn't seen Chloe in almost 6 months. She was still toddling then, her hair a mess of golden curls and her giggle the only thing that could make Hannah forget her own worries. I found her in the arms of a social worker, sitting quietly in a sterile waiting room, clutching a stuffed bunny that had one ear missing. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. She didn't understand, of course. She didn't know her parents weren't coming back. But somehow when she reached for me, I knew. There was no grand speech.
No epiphany.
Just a moment. Her hand in mine. And I said the only thing I could. "I've got you now, sweetheart. I won't let go." Adopting her wasn't easy. I had to fight through paperwork, interviews, home visits. There were nights I cried because I didn't think I was enough, young, unmarried, not particularly maternal. But Chloe made me more than enough. She softened my hard edges. She gave purpose to my chaos. Slowly we built a life that was ours. 3 years later I met David Thompson. He was the opposite of me. Calm, grounded, a high school English teacher who quoted Robert Frost while making pancakes. He met Chloe on our 3rd date and brought her a book instead of candy. She fell for him before I did. What made me fall was watching him read to her, doing silly voices, letting her turn pages even when she got peanut butter on them. He wasn't just playing the part. He loved her. It was real. He proposed to both of us. Literally. He knelt with one ring for me and a charm bracelet for Chloe, asking if we'd be his family. I cried so hard I forgot to say yes. After the wedding, David formally adopted Chloe. It was his idea. "I want her to know she's mine in every way," he'd said. It should have been the start of something beautiful. And in many ways it was. But that was also when I met Helen and George. They were cordial at first. Polite. A little stiff. Helen brought over lasagna. George offered to help fix the fence in the backyard. They asked about Chloe, what she liked, what grade she was in. It all felt fine. Until one evening, when Chloe drew a picture of our family and gave it to Helen. "Look," she said proudly. "I made us." Helen studied the drawing for a long second, then smiled tightly. "That's lovely, dear. But maybe next time draw one of just you and Lily. That's your cousin, your real family." I didn't say anything that night. I told myself it was a slip. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. But over time the signs stacked up like bricks. Chloe's gifts were always a little smaller. Her birthday card once said, "To Chloe from David's parents." At Christmas, Lily got a pink bicycle with sparkly ribbons. Chloe got a sweater that still had the tag marked clearance. Helen never missed Lily's school plays. She always had an excuse when it came to Chloe's. Still, I tried to keep the peace. For David. For the family we were building. I didn't want to stir up trouble over small things. But Chloe noticed. Of course she did. Once, as I tucked her in, she asked, "Mommy, how come Grandma Helen hugs Lily longer than me?" And I said the worst thing I've ever said to her. "She doesn't mean to, baby. Maybe she's just tired." I should have told her the truth. That some people never learn how to love beyond blood. And that their failure has nothing to do with her worth. But I was afraid. Afraid of making David choose. Afraid of tearing something apart that was only just beginning to hold. Now I know better. I know that silence is its own kind of betrayal. Because when I found Chloe asleep on the porch, the silence I'd clung to had already done its damage. And it was my job, no, my right, to fix it. The first real fracture came during a family barbecue the summer after our wedding. The sun was high, kids were running through sprinklers in the backyard. And Helen had outdone herself with finger sandwiches and lemon tarts arranged like they belonged in a magazine spread. Chloe and Lily were both 7 then. Same age, same little matching sundresses I'd bought them for the occasion. They looked like sisters from a distance, laughing, chasing butterflies. But as the adults sat around sipping iced tea and complimenting Helen's decor, the subtle lines of separation began to show. "Lily, come help Grandma set the table," Helen called sweetly. Chloe looked up hopefully, and I swear I saw her take a step forward. But Helen's eyes passed over her like she wasn't even there. "You'll get the blue plate, my special helper," she cooed to Lily. Chloe sat back down on the grass, picking at a dandelion. Her smile wilted with it. I wanted to say something. But David was laughing with his brother Michael about a broken grill, and I told myself again that maybe I was overthinking it. That maybe Helen just forgot. That maybe next time she'd call them both. Except next time never came. It became a pattern. At Thanksgiving, Chloe asked if she could help stir the gravy. Helen said, "Maybe later, dear," and handed the spoon to Lily instead. At Christmas, Lily's name was spelled in gold cursive on her stocking. Chloe's was written in marker on a plain red one. During a sleepover at the Thompson house, Chloe told me later that Lily got to sleep in Grandma's bed and Chloe was given an old sleeping bag. Because special spots are for special girls. David noticed, but only partially. He'd say things like, "Mom's a little old-fashioned," or, "Maybe she just has a closer bond with Lily because she's known her longer." But whenever I brought it up seriously, he became uncomfortable. Defensive even. "She's trying, Jules," he said one night after dinner. "Let's not make this a thing. Chloe's loved. That's what matters." But it did matter. It mattered to Chloe. It mattered to me. What stung more than the unequal gifts or the photos without Chloe in them was the way Helen spoke about her. As if she was someone else's child borrowing space in their world. "She's so independent," she once told me over coffee, like it was a flaw. "Not as affectionate as Lily. You know, some kids just don't bond the same." "She bonds fine," I replied, a little sharper than I meant to. "You just have to meet her where she is." Helen blinked at me with that polite, unreadable smile. Of course. Then there was the moment, burned into my memory, when George handed Lily an old necklace from Helen's jewelry box. "This was your grandma's when she was a girl," he said proudly. "Now it's yours." Chloe had been sitting next to them on the couch. She watched the entire thing with a soft, uncertain expression, and then quietly excused herself to the kitchen. I followed her. Found her rinsing an already clean glass in the sink. "Sweetheart," I asked gently. She shrugged. "It's okay. It wasn't mine to begin with." I knelt beside her. "It's okay to feel left out, you know. That wasn't fair." She nodded, still not looking at me. "I'm used to it." That sentence broke something in me. I brought it up with David again. That night late, when Chloe had gone to bed and the house was quiet. "They don't see her as family," I told him, voice thick with frustration. "And she knows it. She feels it." David rubbed his face. "I know. I see it too. But it's complicated." "It's not complicated," I snapped. "It's cruelty. Just because it's dressed up in polite smiles and lemon pie doesn't mean it's harmless." He was quiet for a long time. Then, they'll come around. They just need more time. That was always the excuse. More time. More grace. More silence. But Chloe was running out of time. Every interaction with Helen chipped away at her confidence. Slow, small fractures that I feared might one day split wide open. And then came the business trip. It was a 3-day leadership retreat in Seattle, mandatory for senior executives. Chloe was on spring break, and I'd arranged for our usual babysitter, Abby, to stay with her. But 2 days before the trip, Abby caught the flu. We scrambled. My mom was recovering from surgery and couldn't travel. David's brother had a newborn and his wife was exhausted. Our neighbors were away. I'll figure it out, David promised. Maybe I can work from home. But that afternoon his company called. One of their tech clients had a massive system outage, and David, as senior account liaison, had to fly to Denver immediately. I'll ask my parents, he said. They've been offering to take Chloe for years. It's time we let them. I hesitated. Are you sure? They'll be fine, he insisted. It's only 3 days. I swallowed hard and nodded, trusting him. But my gut twisted even then. The morning of my departure was unusually quiet. Chloe sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her stuffed bunny Daisy while I zipped up my suitcase. You're going to be okay with Grandma and Grandpa, right? I asked, crouching beside her. She gave a tiny nod. Can I call you before bed? Of course, I said, brushing her curls back. Every single night. And Daddy will be home a day before me. Chloe's fingers toyed with Daisy's ear. Do they like me, Mommy? The question hit me like a slap. It was so bare. So vulnerable. I forced a smile. They're just a little different, honey. But yes, they're family. And family takes care of each other. Even as the words left my mouth, I hated them. I hated how they tasted like denial. Helen and George arrived 10 minutes later. George honked from the driveway like it was a chore. Helen barely looked up from her phone when I opened the door. Morning, I greeted, trying to keep my voice neutral. Helen stepped in, wearing a sharp beige coat and her usual perfume that made the hallway smell like a department store makeup counter. You all packed? She asked, eyeing Chloe. We brought snacks and coloring books. George even brought a puzzle. That's great, I said. She's got her dance shoes in her bag. Rehearsal is Tuesday at 4. Please don't forget. We raised 2 boys, Helen said, already walking toward the kitchen. One little girl won't be a problem. I knelt down to Chloe's level again. Remember what I told you. You can always call me. No matter what. I know, she whispered, eyes glassy. I hugged her so tightly I felt her ribs. Then I watched her climb into the back seat of their SUV with Daisy tucked under one arm. As they pulled away, Chloe turned to look at me through the window. I waved. She didn't wave back. Seattle was beautiful that time of year. All cherry blossoms and crisp air, but I barely noticed. My brain was still back in Portland, checking in with Chloe every 10 minutes. The first night I video called her at 8 p.m. sharp. Helen answered with a sigh, holding the phone too low. Oh, you're calling now? Yes, I told Chloe I'd talk to her before bed. She passed the phone off like it was an annoying chore. Chloe appeared in frame, her hair messy, still in the clothes she'd worn that morning. Mummy. Hey, sweetheart. How was your day? She shrugged. Okay. We had spaghetti. That sounds yummy. Did you do anything fun? She glanced off screen, then whispered. I spilled water on the table. Grandma said I need to be more careful. I frowned. Accidents happen, baby. Did anyone yell? She hesitated. No. But she looked really mad. I tried to sound reassuring. Just be yourself. I'll be home soon. The second night, George answered. She's already in bed, he said gruffly. Long day. But it's only 7:30. She was exhausted. He hung up before I could ask more. I tried texting David. He responded 2 hours later. Still in Denver. Client crisis. Parents say Chloe's doing fine. Hang in there. I didn't sleep well. Something felt off. By the third day, the client I was meeting closed the deal early. My boss was thrilled. Why don't you enjoy the city before heading back? But I couldn't. My stomach churned the entire way back to the hotel. Something inside me screamed. Go home. Now. I booked the next flight out. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted it to be a surprise for Chloe. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I'd find her building puzzles with George and sipping cocoa with Helen. Maybe all this dread was just working mom guilt. I landed back in Portland just after noon and took a cab straight home. The house looked normal from the outside. Quiet. Still. I expected to see their car in the driveway, but it wasn't there. That was my first red flag. I tried calling the house phone. No answer. I called Helen's cell. Straight to voicemail. My hands trembled as I unlocked the front door. Hello. I called, dropping my suitcase. Chloe. Silence. The living room was untouched.
No toys, no coats.
The kitchen still had dishes in the drying rack from the day I left. Then I heard it. A faint, muffled cough. Coming from the backyard. I rushed to the patio door and opened it. And there she was. My daughter. My Chloe. Lying curled on the porch swing. A thin blanket wrapped around her. No shoes. Hair tangled. Face red from the cold. Her stuffed bunny tucked under one arm. And next to her? A cracked ceramic plate. Pieces gathered together like she tried to glue them with hope. I ran to her. Oh my God, Chloe. What happened? She blinked slowly. I dropped the plate. Grandma got mad. Said if I wanted to break things like a stray, then I could sleep like one. My jaw locked. I couldn't breathe. She said Lily would never behave like this. She left you outside? I choked out. She said she and Grandpa were taking Lily to that new restaurant. Said they'd be back before bedtime. I scooped her into my arms, blanket and all. And I swore in that moment, if they came back tonight I'd be ready. No more silence. No more appeasement. No more pretending Chloe was anything less than mine. I carried Chloe inside like she was glass. Her body felt lighter than I remembered. She clung to me without a word, her face pressed against my collarbone, her little fingers fisting the fabric of my coat as if letting go meant she'd have to go back out there. I laid her gently on the couch, wrapped her in the thickest throw blanket I could find, and ran to the kitchen to make warm cocoa. My hands shook as I poured the milk. I spilled some on the counter and didn't bother wiping it up. When I returned, she was awake but silent. Staring at the fireplace, her eyes distant. I sat beside her and offered the mug. Careful, it's warm. She took it in both hands slowly like she wasn't sure she deserved it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw things. I wanted Helen and George in front of me at that moment so I could ask them, how could you do this to a child? But instead I sat still. I waited. I let her be the one to speak first. Do you remember the purple bowl? She asked softly. My brow furrowed. What bowl, baby? The one Grandma said was antique. I dropped it yesterday. My throat tightened. And what happened? She yelled. Said I didn't respect anything. Said I needed to learn to behave like girls who belong. She sipped her cocoa. Then she made me wash the dishes. Even the ones Lily used. I steadied my voice. Did Lily help you? Chloe shook her head. Lily got to play on Grandpa's tablet. They gave her cookies. A long silence followed. Mommy, Chloe said, staring into her cup. Am I not really part of the family? The question shattered me. I put my mug down and took her cocoa gently, setting it aside. Then I turned to her and cupped her face in my hands. Chloe Grace Evans Thompson, listen to me very carefully, I said. You are my daughter. In every way that matters. You are part of this family. And nothing and no one can ever take that away from you. Her lower lip trembled. But Grandma said that I should be grateful. That if you didn't take me in, no one would have wanted me. She said I'm lucky. My nails dug into my palms to stop my hands from shaking. You are not lucky we took you in, I said, fiercely but tenderly. We are lucky. I am lucky. Every single day I get to be your mom is the best day of my life. Her voice came out as a whisper. Then why doesn't she like me? I didn't have an answer. Not a gentle one. Not a truthful one that wouldn't poison her heart. She doesn't know you the way I do, I said finally. She hasn't taken the time to see how amazing you are. That's her mistake. Not yours. Chloe nodded slowly, but I could see the doubt hadn't vanished. The damage was deeper than 3 days. This had been building for years, and I hadn't seen it clearly. Or maybe I had and didn't want to believe it. Sweetheart, I said, I need you to tell me everything. Not just about today. Everything that's happened while I've been gone. She hesitated. Then slowly she began. She told me how on the first day Helen gave her a list of chores to keep her busy, while Lily was allowed to play. How she had to wipe the counters 3 times because Helen said she missed a spot. How Lily got her favorite mac and cheese for lunch, but Chloe was told, "We're not wasting special food if you're just going to sulk." On the second day, they took Lily to a movie. Chloe asked if she could come too. Helen said, "You've been too emotional lately. We don't want a scene in public." So they left her at home. Alone. Again. Did they say where they were going? No, she said. Just that I needed to think about my attitude. And they locked the door? She nodded. I couldn't go outside. I just watched cartoons, but the volume had to stay low. Then came the worst part. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. Can I show you something? Of course. She climbed off the couch, walked slowly to her backpack by the front door, and pulled out a small notebook. It was floral with a unicorn sticker on the cover. Inside were scribbled pages. Her handwriting, loopy and careful, filled the margins. I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget what happened, she said, in case I needed to prove it. Page after page of little entries. Monday, I had to clean the sink. Lily watched TV. Grandma said Lily is more graceful. I don't know what that means. Tuesday, Grandma said I broke the plate on purpose. I didn't. I tried to say sorry, but she said I always say sorry and it doesn't mean anything anymore. Wednesday, I asked if I could have ice cream too. Grandma said, "You haven't earned it." Lily got a second scoop. I don't like mint, but I would have eaten it anyway. Tears burned in my eyes as I flipped through the pages. In her own quiet way, Chloe had been documenting abuse. Emotional abuse. Neglect. Psychological manipulation. And she did it not for revenge, but to protect herself. To prove she wasn't lying. That broke me more than anything else. Chloe, I said, holding her close, you did everything right. You were brave. And I promise you this will never happen again. She sniffled. Are they coming back tonight? Yes, I said. But you won't be the one who has to deal with them. I glanced at the clock. 5:12 p.m. Dinner time at the Thompson house. They'd be home soon. And I would be waiting. I sent Chloe upstairs with a plate of sliced apples and peanut butter and told her to rest. She curled up on her bed with Daisy and her notebook, clutching them like lifelines. I promised I'd call her if she needed to come down, but only if she wanted to. Then I sat on the couch and waited. Every second dragged. I looked at the clock. 5:37 p.m. Right on time, I heard tires crunch on the gravel driveway. Muffled laughter. Then the slam of car doors. Through the window I saw Helen first, stepping out with a paper bag from that trendy steakhouse downtown. George followed, carrying Lily on his shoulders like some victorious hero returning from battle. They were still smiling as they came up the steps, until Helen spotted me through the glass. She flinched just slightly. I opened the door before she could even reach for the knob. Oh! Helen blinked. Julia, what are you doing here? George shifted Lily off his shoulders. Where's Chloe? He asked, glancing past me. She's upstairs, I said evenly. Resting. After spending 4 hours alone on the porch while you were out enjoying dinner. Helen blinked. Excuse me. I crossed my arms. She told me everything. The plate. The punishment. The chores. The names you called her. And most importantly, being left alone. Again. Helen scoffed. Don't be so dramatic. She broke a valuable heirloom. She needed to learn responsibility. By banishing her to the porch? Barefoot.
¿No supervisión?
No food. She wasn't hurt, George muttered. No, she wasn't, I said. But she could have been. That's not just unkind. That's dangerous. That's neglect. Helen stepped forward, face tight. We were gone for dinner, that's all. And she was fine when we left. She needed some time to reflect on her behavior. She's 8, Helen. She reflects with crayons and storybooks. Not isolation and shame. Helen rolled her eyes. Oh, please. She's always been overly sensitive. Always playing victim. You let her get away with everything and now she expects to be treated like royalty. She expects to be treated like family, I snapped. Which you've made clear you don't consider her. George looked down, suddenly very interested in his shoes. Where is David? Helen asked, arms crossed. Flying home early. He'll be here tonight. But I don't need him here to say what I'm about to say. I stepped aside. Get your things. You're not staying here another night. What? George blinked. You heard me. You can go to a hotel or drive home. But you are not welcome under this roof. And you will not see Chloe again without me or David present. You can't be serious, Helen barked. You're breaking up this family over one misunderstanding? This wasn't one incident, I said coldly. It's a pattern. Years of favoritism. Years of exclusion. Years of making a little girl feel like she's second class under her own last name. Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. She's not a real Thompson. My breath caught. George winced. Helen. No, I said, my voice like ice. Say that again. Helen raised her chin. She doesn't have our blood. I'm not going to pretend she does just because you needed to play savior. My hand clenched around the notebook I'd taken from Chloe's backpack. I opened it slowly, turned a page and read aloud. Wednesday. Grandma said I whine too much. She said if I were really one of them, I'd have better manners. Helen's face paled. She kept a diary, I said. A record. She was trying to prove she wasn't making it up. I held the notebook out toward George. Go ahead. Read it. Read what she wrote about crying alone in your guest room. About folding Lily's laundry while Lily played games on your tablet. About being told she should be grateful she wasn't in an orphanage. Helen stepped back. You're manipulating her. No, Helen. Isnapat. You broke her. Lily tugged at George's sleeve, confused. What's going on? Go wait in the car, sweetheart, George said gently. But what about Chloe? I brought her a sticker. Now, Helen hissed. Lily reluctantly obeyed, her tiny feet patting down the front steps. When the door shut behind her, George looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. I didn't know, he said quietly. Yes, you did, I replied. You just didn't want to believe it. There was a long, tense silence. Then Helen said, I see what this is. You're poisoning David against us. You're turning Chloe into some tragic little martyr. You always resented us. No, y interrupta. I protected you. For years. I bit my tongue. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, because I didn't want to break David's heart. But now? Now I don't care how uncomfortable the truth is. Helen narrowed her eyes. David won't agree to this. He's our son. And Chloe is his daughter, I said calmly. And tonight you'll find out which one matters more. She opened her mouth. But George, to my shock, put a hand on her arm. Enough, he said quietly. What? She's right, he said. We went too far. Helen gaped at him. You're taking her side? I'm taking Chloe's. Helen shoved past me, storming into the guest room to pack. George stayed behind, staring at the floor. I never meant to hurt her, he said. But you did, I replied. And now it's not about what you meant. It's about what you fix. They left 10 minutes later.
No goodbye. No apology.
Just the sound of tires screeching and a silence that finally felt honest. I went upstairs. Chloe looked up as I opened the door. Are they gone? She asked. I nodded. They won't be staying here anymore. She blinked. Am I in trouble? I sat on the edge of her bed and kissed her forehead.
No, sweetheart.
You're safe now. That's what matters. And as she drifted off to sleep, breathing steady, arms wrapped around Daisy and that little floral notebook, I knew something had changed. Not just in them, but in me. I had finally chosen a side, and I chose my daughter. David's flight landed just after midnight. I waited at the front door with the porch light on, arms crossed not out of anger, but to hold myself together. The moment he stepped out of the car, I saw it, guilt written all over his face. His shoulders were hunched, his hair messier than usual, his eyes searching mine for answers he already feared. I didn't speak. I just opened the door. He stepped inside, dropped his bag and whispered, Where is she? Asleep, I said. She's okay now. I'm so sorry, he said immediately. I should have listened to you. I should have never left her with them. I wanted to yell, I wanted to scream, "Why didn't you protect her too?" But all I did was nod and lead him upstairs. He peeked into Chloe's room and saw her curled under her quilt, Daisy clutched tight, the notebook on her nightstand. He walked over, adjusted her blanket, and kissed the top of her head. "She's so small," he whispered, voice cracking. I closed the door softly behind us. Downstairs, he sat at the kitchen table and buried his face in his hands. "Tell me everything," he said. "All of it." I did. I told him about the porch, the cold, the broken plate, the cocoa, the journal entries. I read some of them aloud. I watched as each word hit him like a stone to the chest. "She wrote it all down," I said. "Every moment. Like she knew no one would believe her." David's face was pale. "Jesus." "And Helen?" I hesitated, still seething. "She called Chloe a stray. Said she's not a real Thompson. That she was lucky to have us at all." David flinched. Then he stood up so fast his chair scraped the tile. "No," he said firmly. "We're done. That's it." I followed him to the living room, where he paced, fists clenched. "She's not seeing Chloe again. Ever. Not unless there's someone supervising. Not unless she apologizes and changes. And even then." He couldn't finish the sentence. He turned to me. "You should have never had to handle this alone. We both should have seen it sooner," I said. "But now we deal with it. Together." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked, "Has she called you?" He nodded. "Both of them. Repeatedly." I let it go to voicemail. "Are you going to talk to them?" He looked at me, eyes clear now. "Yes. But not tonight. I want to talk to Chloe first. I want to look her in the eye and make sure she knows I'm still her dad. That I'll never let anyone treat her like she's less." The next morning, Chloe woke up to find both of us sitting on the edge of her bed. "Daddy," she said sleepily, blinking. "Hey, Bug," he smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "I missed you." She looked unsure, glancing at me. "Are they coming back?" "No," he said immediately. "They're not. And they won't see you again unless Mommy and I are both there. You are not in trouble. You never were." She chewed her lip. "Grandma said you'd always love Lily more because she's your real family." David's entire body went rigid, but his voice was soft. "Chloe, listen to me. You are my daughter. Not my stepdaughter. Not my adopted daughter. My daughter. You are my real family. Nothing changes that. Ever." Her eyes welled with tears. "Promise." He pulled her into his lap and held her tight. "Forever." Afterward, while she watched cartoons downstairs, David called his parents. He put them on speaker. I sat beside him, hand on his knee, grounding him. Helen answered first. "David, finally. I've been worried sick. Your wife has lost her mind." "I told you to never call her that again," David said flatly. "Her name is Julia." Helen's tone turned icy. "Fine. Julia. But this reaction is absurd. Chloe's fine. She's dramatic. You're letting your wife poison her against us." "Stop," David cut in. "You're done talking about my daughter like she's some outsider. You hurt her. You neglected her. You left her outside in the cold as punishment." "She broke a plate," Helen said defensively. "And lied." "She didn't lie," he snapped. "She wrote it down. Every word. Every moment." There was a pause. Then George spoke. "I didn't know she was keeping a journal," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, son. I really am." David sighed. "We're not having this argument anymore. You're not welcome in our home. You won't see Chloe unsupervised again. And if you continue pushing this narrative that she's less than, we'll cut contact completely." "David, please," Helen began. "Save it," he said. "I'm not asking for your approval. I'm protecting my daughter." He ended the call. He sat there, hands shaking, then looked at me. "I should have done that years ago." I squeezed his hand. "But you did it now. And she heard you. That's what matters." That evening I called Dr. Levine, a therapist who specialized in blended families and adopted children. We scheduled an intake session for Chloe that same week. "Will I have to talk about Grandma?" Chloe asked that night. "You only say what you're ready to," I told her. "But it's a safe place. You don't have to protect anyone's feelings in there. She nodded solemnly. Will Daddy go too? Both of us, David said. We're all doing this together. That night, as she fell asleep between us in our bed, I felt something shift. Not closure. Not yet. But certainty. That whatever came next, therapy, family fallout, old wounds reopening, we would face it side by side. Not because we were perfect, but because we were finally choosing what was right. Not for Helen. Not for George. For Chloe. Chloe's first therapy session was the following Thursday. She wore her favorite yellow hoodie, the one with the tiny sunflower embroidered near the wrist, and held Daisy tightly the entire ride. She didn't say much, just watched the rain streak down the car windows like she was waiting for something to be washed away. Dr. Sandra Levine's office sat in a cozy converted house on a quiet street. Inside, the walls were pale green, and there were soft beanbags instead of stiff chairs. It didn't feel like a clinic, it felt like a storybook nook. Chloe clung to my side until Dr. Levine came out to greet her with a gentle smile and a soft voice. I heard you're a really good writer, she said. Chloe blinked, surprised. How do you know? Your mom told me you've been keeping a journal. I think that's pretty brave. Chloe didn't speak, but she nodded just once. She went in alone for that first session. David and I sat in the waiting room in stiff silence, pretending to scroll through our phones while imagining every possible word that might be said behind that closed door. When Chloe finally emerged 45 minutes later, she looked lighter. She wasn't smiling, not quite. But something in her shoulders had loosened. Her grip on Daisy was relaxed. She walked toward us, head held a little higher. Did it help? I asked gently. She shrugged. She's nice. She didn't tell me I was imagining things. That alone felt like a breakthrough. Later that week, the ripple effects began. David's brother Michael called. I heard about what happened, he said, voice low. Mom says you overreacted. That Julia manipulated the whole thing. David exhaled sharply. Do you believe that? Michael was quiet for a beat.
No.
Lily said Chloe looked really sad when they left the house that night. Said she wanted to share her fries with her, but Grandma wouldn't let her. There it was. A truth too small for adults to catch, but big enough to be a child's red flag. Michael hesitated.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I didn't know it was this bad. If you ever want Lily and Chloe to see each other again, I'd be okay with that. But only on your terms. David nodded, tears in his eyes. Thank you. Over the next few weeks, we built a new rhythm. Chloe saw Dr. Levine twice a week. Slowly, her voice returned, not just in therapy but in life. She began humming again during breakfast. She spent whole afternoons writing stories about girls with wings who ran away from bad castles and built their own forests. We took her to a pottery class. On her second visit, she sculpted a tiny porcelain plate. It's for me, she said proudly. So I can break it if I want and not get in trouble. I smiled and kissed her forehead. Sounds like freedom. Then one day David received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, old-fashioned cursive. It was from George. David, I know I failed. I stood by and let things happen that I should have stopped. I thought I was being neutral. But silence is not neutral when harm is being done. Chloe deserved better. You all did. If she ever wants to hear it from me directly, I'll say it. I'll wait until she's ready. But I'll say it every time, as many times as it takes. She is my granddaughter. I see that now. David folded the letter, placed it gently on the kitchen table, and sat in silence for a long while. He didn't call George. Not yet. But he left the letter on Chloe's nightstand. She read it quietly that evening and said nothing. Then she folded it, slid it under her pillow and said, Can we go to the library tomorrow? It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something better. It was possibility. The kind born not from obligation but from truth. From the decision to stop protecting comfort and start protecting the child who should have always come first. And for the first time in a long time, we were all moving in the right direction. Together. Chloe turned 9 on a Saturday. It was sunny, the sky clear for the first time in weeks, like even the weather had decided she deserved a better day. She wanted a picnic in the park. No castles or bounce houses, she'd said. Just people who make me feel safe. So we packed a basket with her favorites, peanut butter sandwiches cut into stars, strawberries with sugar dust, and apple juice in little glass jars. David made lemon cupcakes. I packed a new sketchbook wrapped in a ribbon. We invited only a few people: Michael, his wife, and Lily, our next-door neighbor, and her dog, Chloe's art teacher, Dr. Levine, who brought a small potted plant labeled "You're growing so brave," and George. He arrived quietly, holding a gift wrapped in plain brown paper, and wearing a look of humble nervousness I'd never seen before. "Do you want me to tell him to leave?" David asked, watching Chloe carefully. But Chloe looked at me and said, "Can I give him a rule first?" "Of course." When George approached, Chloe stood up from her picnic blanket, all freckles and firm resolve, and held up one finger. "One rule," she said. "You don't talk about blood. Not even a little." George looked her in the eye and said, "That's a perfect rule. I'll follow it." Then he knelt and handed her the package. Inside was a wooden box, small, smooth, hand-carved, with her name burned into the lid. Chloe Grace. No last name.
No symbols.
Just her. "I made it in the garage," he said, "to keep your stories safe." Chloe stared at it, then whispered, "Thank you," so softly I almost missed it. George didn't try to hug her. He just smiled and stepped back. Lily rushed in next. The two girls disappeared into a field of daisies, barefoot, laughing, their hair bouncing in the wind. No one told them to be quieter. No one corrected who sat where. It was the first time I saw Chloe laugh without looking over her shoulder. Later that evening, when the sky had turned golden and our guests had gone, Chloe climbed into my lap on the porch swing and rested her head on my shoulder. "Mommy." "Yeah, sweetheart. I know I don't have Grandma Helen anymore," she said matter-of-factly, "but I don't think I need everyone. I just need the ones who see me." Tears filled my eyes. "That's more than enough, baby." She looked up. "Am I your real daughter now? You've been my real daughter since the day I held you in that courthouse hallway and promised I'd never let go." She smiled, tired but at peace. Then she asked the question that had haunted her once, now reborn in strength. "Can I break that plate now?" I laughed through my tears. "Anytime you want." That night, she placed the porcelain plate she'd made at pottery class on a towel in the backyard, and smashed it with a small rock. Just once. Deliberate. Controlled. Liberated. Then she looked up at me and said, "Now no one gets to tell me what I'm worth." And I knew we'd done it. Not just protected her but empowered her. We hadn't fixed everything, but we'd rewritten the ending. No more silence. No more shrinking. Just a little girl who knew her worth, standing in a yard of broken porcelain, surrounded by people who saw her fully. That was the birthday she would remember. The one where she was finally completely home.